At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
Carbine, it's multimedia. You can get text, translate to whatever language, getting away with the legacy equipment and going into a cloud-based solution.
It's the first time in U.S. history that we have an EZNet through cloud-native call handling.
As a police officer, to have the victim go video, that's unheard of.
You're getting upgrades every month, not every year.
To schedule your free Carbine demo, please visit carbine.com/WTT.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital RapidDeploy as well as Carbine, but this is an exclusive RapidDeploy episode, and a shout out to patrons as always. Thank you for everything. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you, but especially those that are here who are watching, listening, sharing, supporting. All of it. Thank you so very much. This is going to be an excellent episode that we're going to be doing here today. Also, really quick though, for patrons, a perk for you only are audio versions of the DRT as well as Open Mic Live, and there's always all that bonus content that's coming at you as well. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. It is July 20th right now, and I've said this in the last few episodes and live broadcasts. I don't know where the month is going already. June, gone. Same thing with May. I turned 41 in May, and it was just gone. And it happens all the time, right? In the summertime, it just goes super fast. But as always, there's a lot of stuff going on. Awesome content coming out, episodes, amazing stories, powerful ones. But then also we have conferences still that are going on during this time. In a couple of weeks, we've got National App Code that is coming up. I'll be out there. I will not have a booth. I will not have a speaking spot there at all. I'm going as an attendee, but also going there to do some camera work and walking through the vendor hall and doing different things with sponsors and such and attendees, and still recording some episodes as well. But it's going to be a different experience, and I am looking forward to it very much so. And then of course we've got all the conferences that are coming up that going into fall time. And you'll have Imagine Listening, more episodes, more speaking spots, a lot of different things that are coming up. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Again, I'm excited for this episode because recently, just as recent as last week, Saturday, on the 16th of July, 988 went into effect. And there's a lot that comes with this. And there were a lot of people that were sharing many different things on social media, trying to get folks prepared for it. and we're going to find out so much more about it. And again, I'm just excited. I've got three folks on here with me today, and my guest starting out with Amy, and she is the deputy director out of Greenville County, and then Jennifer. She is executive director of the Mental Health America of Greenville County as well. This is all out of South Carolina. And then we have got Jason, who's the VP of Sales at RapidDeploy. Hello.
Hello. Hey.
Y'all look whipped. This is going to be fun. So for those who are watching and listening and everything right now, we were having some issues in the beginning. We've had some camera issues and stuff, and I have had the same thing where I'll just tell you this really quick before we get started. There was a different camera that I had that I was using before I started using this one. I didn't realize that there was a timer. So I'm live doing a broadcast, and after about 25 minutes, it just went black. And I'm just sitting, I'm still talking. People are like, where did you go? What's going on? So I had to like hit the button on the camera so that it would turn on. But then after that, it would turn off like every 5 minutes. And then I thought, you know what? This my time. Thank you, everyone. We are done. There's nothing else to do. So we were having a little bit of camera issues before, and you all just kind of made me flash back to that time. So thank you. That was fun. I am very happy to have you all here to talk about what we're going to be talking about here, 988, but also to learn more about each one of you. So, Amy, I want to start with you. How did you get into public safety? What is it that you're doing now?
So I kind of fell into public safety. It's the only full-time job I've ever had. I was a teenager going to school, working part-time as a cashier. And one of the officers came up to me and said, we need a girl to work night shift at the police department. And at the time I was going to school to become a nurse. And I thought, I don't know about all that. I'm going to school. And he said, pays $5 an hour and has benefits. And I said, sign me up. Because I thought I was going to be rich. And I never finished nursing school. Once I got involved, I was hooked. And now, 32 years later, I'm still involved in 911 and emergency communications in Greenville County. The good Lord had different plans for me, and this is where I'm at.
That is amazing. 32 years. Thank you for your service and what you do for this profession. And when I started out dispatching, I started out in 2001. And I ended up going, it was a small police department, Central Florida, the city of Frostproof, and just a blink of an eye type place. But when I started out there, it was $7 an hour.
Yes.
And that was it. Yeah. And so
I thought I was going to be rich.
Right. Yeah. And I had no idea what I was getting into either. I ended up getting in there, and just so many different things that were going on. But I remember one of the good things, though, I guess kind of a perk, the fact that I worked in dispatch for the police department, was that the landlady that I had, she asked me where I worked. Now, originally the rent was supposed to be like $700 or $800. This was like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath on the lake. It had a dock and a boat. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford that, making $7 an hour. And I told her where I worked, and she goes, I'm going to take it down to 500 because you work for the police, and that's amazing. I was like, oh, well, thank you. So it ended up working out and everything. But for you, what was it like in the beginning? But I want to go through a little bit of this before we get into everyone else's background and such. But what was it like for you in the beginning, getting into dispatch? Because you had the money, there was benefits. Sign me up. You were all about it. But what was that like for you? Was there anything that surprised you at all?
I had no clue what I was getting myself involved in. And things were different back then. Law enforcement was different. The public was different. And, at that time, the police department was embraced by the community. They fed us, they took care of us. We were part of their family. and that we were their protectors, and that's the way they treated us. And at that time, things have changed so much in the past 32 years. When I started, I had worked a couple of weeks, and we started getting addresses on 911 calls, and we thought that this is just it. This is changing everything. We started getting addresses. We did everything by hand. There were no computers. We did all of the call taking, record keeping. We kept logs, and we cut cards. And I also started in a very small department. I was the only dispatcher on duty, and we were responsible for the radio, the phone, walk-ins, and also the jail. And that was an extremely eye-opening experience. And it was eye-opening for me because I had never been exposed to law enforcement or anything like that. I remember once they would call, and at that time they called crack eggs, and they used payphones, which they no longer have anymore. But they would call from the local pool hall, and they would say, so-and-so's got eggs in their car. And, you get prank calls, and I'm like, well, it's not against the law to have eggs in your car.
Right.
Right. So one night the sergeant's standing behind me. He's an old gruff guy, and he's standing behind me, and they call and they say, so-and-so's got eggs in their car. And I'm like, it is not against the law to have eggs in your car. And if you keep calling, we're going to lock you up. And I hang up, and he's like, what did they tell you? And so I tell him, and he looks at me and he goes, honey, eggs is drugs. That is crack cocaine. And I was like, oh, I had no clue. And I mean, I've been working there 6 months. There's no telling how many calls I had taken like that. So it was a very eye-opening learning experience for me. And I think that's what got me hooked, was it was so different.
The car eggs.
You didn't have to bring that up, Jason. I think the difference and the learning the difference and the adrenaline rush of it is what got me hooked.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is probably going to be episode maybe 451, I believe. And out of all of the episodes, there have been similar stories where a lot of people ended up getting into public safety, especially dispatch, green. They had no idea. And definitely when they got in there were certain things that happened that they thought, did I make the right choice? Like, was this what is going on here? And then when they get through it, though, there's that moment, right? There's that moment where it's either an incident that happened within dispatch or a training, incident, or a trainer, or a coworker, or maybe a call, something like that. Specifically, you end up realizing this is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it sounds like there were moments for you as well where you knew that this is where you wanted to be. I mean, it was the incident types are the same, but the situations are always different, right? And once you think you have taken the craziest call, the universe says, hold my beer, and bam, you get an even more crazy call, right? It's interesting how that works. Now with what you were saying with the eggs, I'll say this really quick, and then we'll move over to Jennifer here. But I'm in Central Dispatch now. I ended up moving back home from Florida to Southwest Michigan. I ended up working in dispatch for the county that I grew up in, and someone called in, and they said they needed to speak to an officer out front of the cop shop, and I couldn't understand what they were saying, and I kept asking the person to repeat, and the person goes, the cop shop, and kept saying it over and over. And I said, hold on a minute, because the person wasn't in danger or anything. So I put him on hold, and I stand up in Central Dispatch where there's more people than just me that was working alone in the beginning. And I said, do you guys know where this place is at? I don't know where this guy is at. And I said it, I repeated it, and no one knew. I went as far as looking into our in-house database to look for a business or restaurant called the Cop Shop. And then when I asked him again, he goes, sir, do you really not know what I'm saying? I'm standing in front of the police department, the cop shop. And I went, oh. I was like, I apologize, sir. I had never heard that term before. So my apologies. I will send someone to walk outside of the police department that you're standing in front of, the cop shop. And then I stood up after I got off the phone with that person, and I explained that to them, and one person did know. They didn't tell me, that jerk. But everybody else was like, I had no idea either. So I'm right there with you, Amy. There are things that we hear sometimes that we've never heard before, and then egg on our face. but it's a learning thing, right? Because then when somebody else comes in, you can tell them too, or you can let it go, like the one person did with me. Now, moving over to Jennifer, a little bit about your background and really what kind of what was the driving factor, the motivation to kind of get into mental health and wellness and such.
Well, it started at a grocery store also.
Oh. Interesting.
My background's in communications disorders, and I moved to South Carolina and had a job while I was looking at a grocery store, and was in the cash office and heard someone talking about abuse. And it was third shift, and I'm like, this isn't okay. What can we do at the middle of the night? And I looked when they had phone books and found crisis line. And I called and said, this is what's going on. And the woman said, well, is there anything you want to talk about while I'm looking up the resources? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm fine. I just need to know how to help my friend. And then later I found an ad in the newspaper they were looking for volunteers for the crisis line. And I thought, well, I can ask people if there's anything they want to talk about too. And I applied to be a volunteer, and God changed the direction of everything as well. And I stayed on and got hired and through various positions. So mental health has always been in my heart because of a different family and all of that. But I was definitely surprised that this is where I've landed.
It's interesting, right? Sometimes it feels like we're put in a certain place at the right time, and it was just meant to be. And the reason I say that as well is because I'm a firm believer that some of the phone calls that I took when I was in dispatch, those were meant for me. When my grandmother passed away in 2007, I was the one who took that phone call. And I feel like it was meant for me because of the fact that my grandmother was with my parents in the beginning when they first got married, before myself and my siblings were born. So when I was born, she was there for me. So it was meant to be that at the end, I was there for her. So in the same sense with, both you, and Amy, you were in the right place at the right time. And look, you've been doing this ever since. And so for Jennifer, for you though, I guess, what is the process? What, because I only know so much about, the crisis hotlines and everything. What is it that goes into, I guess, you kind of preparing to start taking calls?
Well, we first start with a screening process to make sure that people are in a healthy place to take calls. A lot of people that come to us are passionate because of a reason. Maybe they've lost a loved one to suicide, or mental illness has been in their family. And we want to make sure that they're in a good place to hear these stories. And so we start with a screening process, and then the individuals go through about 40 hours of classroom type training and another 20 of mentoring to listen in on calls, to be listened to, and coaching them through how to take the call. So they go through a lot of training. And that's going to get a bit longer as 988 rolls out and they try to standardize the system a little bit.
So there's a lot that's been going on, I would say, since about 2016 on, with the mental health of dispatchers and call takers and such, and debriefings that are really important for everyone to go to learn every person's side and kind of not feel alone, right? And there's more of self-care. So I'm thinking that, maybe it's a little similar with in your line of work as well. You know, is that a big part? Is self-care, kind of building that culture within where you work?
Absolutely. I mean, in order for us to be compassionate, we have to take care of ourselves. And I think one of the benefits that I learned early on was there's only so many times you can ask other people, how do you take care of yourself? How are you going to get through? What's going to keep you safe? That you can't start looking at yourself going, okay, how am I going to take care of myself? And we have a strong team here, and debriefing after calls is part of the natural process too. So that helps a lot.
That is excellent. I think we could definitely learn a lot from each other because they always say put your oxygen mask on first, right? That's what they say on the airplane, and definitely in just in general in life. But as for a lot of us who are empaths, we put ourselves in other people's shoes to kind of relate to these callers and everything that's going on. But that stuff sticks with us, and but I don't know why it is. Because I've gone through this myself, and I'm sure you all have as well. But we don't always take care of ourselves, right? And a lot of times, sometimes we put that blame on ourselves for certain outcomes. Was there a different line of questioning that I could have done? Was there anything that I could have done? And like for me, when I was in dispatch, I needed to know that I had done everything I could have to kind of, feel better, about certain outcomes in those calls. Um, Man, it's definitely something. But can you? What do you think about that part of it, Jennifer? We can kind of learn from each other and how you do things, but also how we can do things as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I found really helpful when I started, because my family thought that this was not a good plan. I cried at Hallmark commercials. So they were really concerned that this was not a good idea. And one of the things I heard very clearly in our training was that if we're doing our job in the way that they've trained us, the individual who's calling is making the choices and decisions about their life. We're there to be a backdrop, to bounce, be a sounding board, to talk through those things. Mm-hmm. But we're not there to give advice. We only know a snapshot of what's going on in your world. We can't make that call, but we're helping you make that call. And that really helped me understand that if I stayed in the lane they trained me in, then the choices are the individual's choices. And that's what people want. We have enough people in our lives telling us what to do, how to think, how to feel, how to fix things, and having them make the choice is always better. So that was a really helpful thing. But to your point, it's not perfect. We definitely also go through and second guess and wonder, but that was the grounding philosophy that kept me able to be here this long.
I like that. And so I've got one last question here before we move over to Jason to get his background and such. But, we heard from Amy and how, this kind of really got into her blood and everything right away. So how did it get into yours? Because you've been doing this for a little while now, right? So yeah. Was there a moment, or was it just that, kind of sitting back and reflecting on your job and thinking, oh, I'm in the right spot?
I think what amazed me most is how you can have these meaningful conversations and not even need to know each other's names, and that there was safety in people being vulnerable and sharing that with you, and that they could walk through it. I know the other thing that I remember a call early on where the individual presented delightful, having a good day, just wanted a number for the attorney. But what we did different was we were like, I was saying, is there something you want to talk about while I look that up? And the individual talked about how they were in economic despair, and that the reason they needed the attorney was to make sure their kids were taken care of after he killed themselves. And we talked about everything and gave him a lot more resources. None of them was the attorney, but it made me realize how we all walk around with masks. And even in that desperate place, he was still trying to make it okay. And if we hadn't asked that one more question, he would have been a statistic. And so I just think it's really powerful that when people have a safe place to talk, that they will.
I fully agree. A lot of the folks that called in that they were calling for help in that same sense. I had a trainer that I started doing a lot more things just like him. He would have people who would call in that were just at their end, and he, of course, we're sending help out there and everything, but there's that time, before help gets there where you start, talking to the person. And I remember listening to him, and he would start asking, what types of movies do you like? What type of music, and then he would just start talking to the person and just being human, just being human. And by the time, help got there, the person they ended up not getting transported because they just really needed someone to talk to. So you're right, that connection that's there, that's always been, powerful, but always very interesting, that it's just, in a voice. We find that comfort in a voice without a face. And it's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing that we're able to do that. Jason, over to you now. What is your background, and what really kind of drove you into moving into public safety?
Yeah, Ricardo, I should have went first. Those are really two good stories. I don't think mine will be compare. I was actually working for a consulting firm down in Florida, and we had different projects across different state agencies, but I kept somehow going back to the agency that ran public safety for the state of Florida. Ended up working with them and the Florida 911 board on different initiatives across the state. Also had the opportunity to audit some 911 systems in other states and help with initiatives as far as raising the fee, statute changes in language, whatever that may be. And I kept it, no matter what other project would come up, I somehow ended back in the public safety forefront. At the same time, though, I was volunteering, and I was on the board of directors for my local 211. 211 of Big Bend, which is also a crisis hotline. And part of our qualification to be on the board was we had to sit and take calls and stuff. And I didn't have any calls like everyone here, but I could see the impact and the impact it had on the community. But when people were calling and needing help or just wanted to talk, a lot of times, like you're saying. So I ended up serving on the board and actually became the board chair. And then the CEO of RapidDeploy, I kept running into him at different conferences, whether it was NENA, ABCO, local Florida NENA conferences. And he kept pitching, cloud this, cloud that. And finally, he offered me $5 an hour. And I made a leap of faith. But the funny thing is when I made that leap, I actually resigned from the board. Because it required so much travel. And I was like, I can't really put the amount of time I need to put into the board. So here recently when 988 made us a full circle back, I'm like, wow, like maybe I'm still supposed to be in this some way, in some shape or form. So that's kind of my evolution to today.
So being in this profession and everything, what, I guess, actually, how about we start with this? Because I asked everybody else this as well.
Okay.
Was there a moment that you can remember where it really got into your blood? And was it the fact that you kept going back into the spot and you thought, man, this must be a sign, like that something has got to be going on? Like, was there ever a moment that just everything connected and you thought, this is what it is?
I would say so. I know you're, most of the fan base with you, probably all call takers, are sit in a chair, have that one defining call or that one defining moment. From me never being in the chair, it was one, I always kept coming back to public safety somehow, but then being with a company and then hearing those safe stories that somehow the platform helped with. And that's independent of any platform, but just hearing how technology helped in that call, to me, that made me, I guess, kind of feel a part of it. even though I wasn't in the chair, and I wouldn't dare say I'm at that level or comparing that. But I think that to me was actually hearing those stories for the first time were very meaningful for me. And I relate that to the technology aspect, but probably looking back, because I don't know if I've ever had that question before, even earlier when it came to statutes or changes in law or whatever that may be, and hearing how that impacted others, I think that was kind of a defining moment as well.
How satisfying is that? How satisfying is it to be not only, have the experience and the background that you have, but to be working for a company that's really doing a lot of different things for not only those, especially those in the chair, but also those that are out in the field. There's a large chunk of the general public that listens to this as well, and I think the reason they come back as well is because of those stories. Like you're saying, you hear about those, but you are involved in a different way and part of a company that is doing so many big things for the 911 profession that's got to be satisfying, man.
It is. It's very satisfying to be, being innovative, being able to sit down in the 911 or 988 world now and collaborate on different initiatives and think of, okay, how can we be innovative and help solve this problem, or help the collaboration more between agencies. It's very, very exciting. I don't have nearly a good story like these two ladies, but I will say we went live in Greenville. It's been a couple of years now, about 2 years now. And I don't remember, it's not that long ago, but I left the agency after going live and got pulled over for speeding. I literally didn't know that. I didn't recognize the speed change down the interstate. The police officer pulls me over. I'm like, sir, I'm so sorry, but we did just launch mapping in Greenville. And he actually, I got out of the ticket, but he also sat there and talked to me for a solid, 20, 30 minutes just about how much that means to them. They're so eager for new technology, how they feel like they can use it, how it helps them with situational awareness when they're rolling up to a call, whatever it may be. And I was like, that's really cool. Feeling like you're somewhat of a part of it, even though you're a few layers removed, right?
It's it's awesome that, of course, that experience, but that they wanted to hear a lot more. Two things here. So I used to work for one of the sponsors that's on here right now in digital. I used to work for them before I ended up going on my own, and we were doing deployments all over the place. There's some in Florida and there's some in Ohio. So I was traveling for work and a family vacation at the same time. It was going to be in the same area, and I'm going through Ohio, and I get pulled over for something similar. And and for those watching and listening, those state troopers do not mess around. Right. This was also this was also on a back road, and it was 55, and I was going 5 over, and I passed by, and I thought, nah, I'll be all right. Nope. Woo! End up getting pulled over, and she walks up, and I remembered her from a presentation that I did for that county. Oh. But she didn't remember me. And I said, we just launched here in the county and stuff. And she's like, oh, that's great. Can I get your license, please? And I was like, okay. I ended up getting a warning, but still, it was it was something else. She was very, very nice, very, very nice. It was a good time, but my experience was a little different than yours. Still fun either way, though. It's good stuff. I'm glad to have the three of you on here and hear more about your backgrounds and your stories and where you come from, because everything that you're talking, like I can hear the passion in your voices, what it is that you do, how proud you are of it, and how important all of this is, not only what you are doing, but the folks around you, but especially this next topic that we're going to be getting into here now. So I want to go back to Jennifer here, and I want you to kind of tell me about 988. Now, this launched July 16th. This was just last week, Saturday, that this launched. And as I said, a large chunk of the folks who listen to this podcast are also from the general public. So this will help for everyone involved. So just starting out, What is 988?
So 988 is a 3-digit phone number that is easy to remember for individuals who are in emotional, substance, or suicidal crises. It's been here for decades, except it was a long 10-digit number. It's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So in essence, the service isn't changing. It's just getting easier to remember for those in crisis. But it also factors in the larger continuum of crisis care and is looking to boost mobile crisis and crisis stabilization units so that we have a whole continuum of care when it concerns a mental health crisis. So, but the 988 is the number you call to access some of those services in an easy way.
So then, like you said, it's been around for a long time and everything has now been shortened up to these 3 digits. But what is the process of a call? So, someone ends up hitting 988. It ends up going to, is it their local center? Does it go to a center that's somewhere else? What's the actual process of it?
Well, the first thing that folks will hear is that they can press 2 if they need to talk with someone who speaks Spanish, or 1 if they're a veteran. And their calls will be routed to centers that are very specific to those needs. And then it routes to the center that is closest to your area code. So right now it's routing by area codes. So even if you're in Texas, but you still have your college phone number, going to come to South Carolina. They're working on that, but and then we would answer the phone, let you know who we are, and ask if there's anything you want to talk about, and give you that safe space to talk through what's going on. And if you need resources, we have that. And if there is a need for an intervention, we'll work through that also and connect you with mobile crisis or stabilization units as well.
So I'm sorry, say that again.
Or 911.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask then for this process. You've got the different, I guess it would be like different levels, of response. And then if you through a line of questioning and everything, or their responses and everything, you decide from there if they should go to 911. Now, if they go to 911, then what is that process like? Is it you are looking at that time, you get the address, you end up finding whatever dispatch center is in that area, and you stay connected? Like, do you stay on the line with them? And the reason I'm asking is because in the sense of like almost a language translation, or someone who's using a relay service just for signing, I would have an issue sometimes. The first time, especially, I took a call where there was a relay service, and the person said, I've got this phone call, and I'm the person who's going to be relaying. And I would say, okay, can you ask the person this? And they would say, no, just talk to me as if you're talking to them. And I would go, oh, okay. And then I would, but then of course I would slip back because I'm talking to a middle person. So what is that like when you're at the level where you need to switch it over to 911?
Gotcha. Well, first, to let everyone know that less than 2% of all of our calls and Lifeline reports needs that level of intervention. So we really only engage 911 when we believe that something is imminently going to happen, or they've already done something to take their life. So what happens logistically in our phone room is ideally I'll have Jason here and say, Jason, you need to call 911, and he'll be listening into both the call that I'm talking with the caller and communicating what's needed from 911. We really take the lead from 911, whether because we're calling 911s from all over the state. So we have to look up in a PSAP locator to make the best guess on which center to call. And, like Amy said, some of them are very small, and it might be the one person who has to do 10 things and can't stay on the phone with us. Mm-hmm. So we take whatever lead they direct us with. and provide them as much real-time information as they need, or we'll call back and say, okay, we got the address now. One thing that's real important for folks to understand is we don't get all of the information that 911 gets when a call comes in. So we're really working with our communication skills, and it will always be the best scenario and outcome if the individual agrees to this. So we're also going to offer mobile crisis and other options as well, but we're always going to try to collaborate and get that permission and agreement.
So just so that I understand this, I'm the one who's calling in to you, right? And you're talking to me, and you determine that I need 911. 911 needs to be called. So do you put me on hold, or do I put you on hold off of my phone and call 911 so that I'm getting the right place? Or are you calling 911 at that time and then we're merging the calls together?
I'm learning now that it's better if they hang up and call.
Oh, okay.
When one gets the information, that's one of the good things about the collaboration. But if we're concerned that something might happen, we'll stay on the phone at this time. And like I said, I'll have my partner place the phone call directly so that I can stay focused with the call.
I gotcha. Okay, so you have another person that's there as well, just like us. If it's a place where there's more than one person, they can jump in as well during that time. Okay, excellent. So so now a question for all of you, because this is one thing that I don't know that is, at least I haven't heard yet. I haven't seen it out there, that there's such a collaboration and everything that's going on. But what goes into kind of a statewide rollout. Now, this specifically, for those who are watching and listening, this is specifically talking about 988 in South Carolina. So what goes into the statewide rollout? Let's go ahead and let's start with Amy. What were some of the things that you started doing there, that you all started doing to kind of prepare for this? Because like I said in the beginning, I was seeing all over social media people saying, get ready. Hopefully, you've been getting ready for all of this. And I don't know if 988 going out, if 911, if they were all together planning this out nationwide, but specifically as we're talking here for South Carolina, what goes into a rollout like this for the state?
Well, there wasn't much that went into it for the state. So the way our state started doing a rollout or getting prepared was Jennifer contacted NENA, the National Emergency Number Association, and got in touch with Wendy Rooney of Spartanburg County, South Carolina, and wanted to meet and see where if there was any technology or anything that with 911, how is that going to work? And Wendy contacted me and invited me to attend the meeting with her. And we sat down with Jennifer and some of her colleagues and started talking about what was going to happen and what was going to happen with 988 and how could 911 be involved and what did 911 need. And it just kind of mushroomed from there. And it was kind of a perfect storm. At that point, it was like everybody collided. Jennifer has since attended some of the APCO and state NENA functions, conferences, and has set up, Wendy and I assisted setting up a working group, a statewide working group with Jennifer set up with mental health and PSAPs across the state. And the working group meets once a week now and is working through how we can all work together. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud about our state. And I've heard different stories from different states of how they're handling it. But I think that's one of the things I'm most proud about our state is because we have approached it from a standpoint of we have two different roles that we play for the public. They're two totally different, even though there are a lot of similarities in the call center and what we go through, we have two distinct roles. And we approached it, we came at it from both sides saying, what can I do to make this easier on you? Instead of saying, what are you going to do for me? We came at it from, what can I do for you? And I think both sides of the table have been very receptive to, well, I can provide you with this, and I have these tools. I have this that we've learned over time in a 911 center, and Jennifer has been able to provide to us something that is, from a 911 and working in a comm center, you have to deal with people who are in mental distress. But we're not trained to be mental health counselors. We're trained to assess the situation and get the correct response for them. And I think that the 911 community in South Carolina has learned from Jennifer's people and from Jennifer's input, how we can use the resources, not just giving them a telephone number, but we can use those resources ourselves. And we can help people, because when you answer a 911 call, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, you answer a 911 call, you become responsible for that person. You feel responsible. I have to fix their issue. I have to help them. And this 988 and the relationships that it's building is, we're realizing we've got another tool in our arsenal now that we can help people with. And that, there's crisis line has always been there, but now we have another tool that is evolving, and we need to take the lessons that we've learned and help them evolve. And I think that's what we've learned the most, is that we can help each other. One doesn't have to replace the other. And then we don't have to have lines in the sand that this is what you do and this is what I do. We can do this together. And I think that's been our biggest, or for me, that's been the biggest lesson on this rollout, is we're not going to change the world, but we can make it a whole lot better place. I hope that answered your question.
Damn. Well done. That's my time. Have a good one, everyone. That was okay. Very well said. I feel like the planets aligned here for all of you, where you say how there wasn't a lot that went into it, but it was because of the fact that the both of you knew exactly what you wanted. And I kind of feel like you're connected in a way as well with this whole grocery store thing, how you both started out and then years later you end up coming together, because
same store.
So, and that kind of, so Jason just kind of got blindsided and he got blindsided, and he really didn't know what he was getting himself into. Jennifer and I cooked that plan up, and we decided we needed help. And that there were tools that 911 has available to them that 988 does not have. And how can, okay, I know everybody is screaming, jumping up and down, going to the FCC, they want location. That ain't going to happen anytime soon. Let's just be realistic. So what can we do in the meantime? How can 911 make 988's job easier in the meantime? How can 988 be self-sufficient and help themselves, basically? And so Jennifer was kind enough to come over, and we just started talking, and then Jason got blindsided.
I think, again, going back to this whole idea of the planets aligning here. I mean, you've got Jason that's coming in, blindsided or not, he had this experience, right, with 211, specifically in his area, how 211 end up going to 988 and such, and was sitting on this board. So there's that experience as well, coming in. And, from the technology side, there were things like you're saying that were needed, stuff that we're probably not going to get right away, but you think outside the box, or you reach out to those that you are working with in different aspects, and they might have something available. So as we're getting into this part of it as well, so Jason, going towards you, there are some challenges. There are definitely some challenges, but that are able to be, resolved in a way, or have some sort of solution. We talk about location accuracy, different routing issues, language translations, and text and stuff. And that's where your part comes in, right? So how, in some of these, as we're talking about working collaborations, your part coming in on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I got a call from Amy, and she's starting to fill me in on 988. But I also, at their conference last year,
Yes.
at the national conference last year here in South Carolina, I actually introduced a speaker who was speaking about 988, and I was able to talk to him a little bit. So I knew it was coming a little bit, but I didn't know all the details. Mm-hmm. So I get a call, and we scheduled a visit and had the opportunity to sit down with Jennifer as well and find out some of the, not necessarily hurdles. I mean, it's how it's a different operating platform or a different operating workflow, right, than 911. Anonymous is big for your callers. Yeah. Unlike usually 988, I think it's the first thing we ask, right? What's your location? Mm-hmm. So it's just a completely different workflow from that perspective. With that being said, the first thing that we think of is our ability to provide location outside of the FCC requirements of whether it's phase 1, phase 2 signals now that everyone's rolling with. Our ability to provide location in a different way was very intriguing, and honestly, I thought that was the first fit. I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, we can absolutely help you guys out. We can provide location. And then I start to talk with Jennifer, and it's like, okay, well, that's about 2% of our calls, as she said earlier, right? So, okay, so let's talk about the other 98%. What does that look like? We knew routing was going to be a concern, as she said earlier. If you're living in Texas now, but you still have the area code here in Greenville, you're going to get routed to this center. How do you go about that today in your workflow to find out what PSAP they go to? Our platform being cloud native, and we can bring in supplemental GIS information. We have the ability to show that PSAP registry across our map, right? Where she can actually say, okay, here's the area code, here's the location. Let me click in that, and the PSAP registry with contact information can populate for her. She's not going to a different portal or somewhere else trying to look that up. We then looked at, like, what if we bring in food banks? What if we bring in this layer? What if we bring in that layer? So the ability to ingest into a map that they're looking at, during the call, not for necessarily location, but for resources, and try to streamline them going to different portals to find that data was the next step for us. And after that, follow-up meetings between Amy and Jennifer, more collaboration. We're like, wait, this tool could also help. I mean, there's, as you probably know, we have language translation and SMS chat and things like that 988 does have access to, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of dispersed. You have to go to different platforms to get to those. So we're trying to bring it all into a one-stop shop, if you will, of how they can use for the betterment of that caller. One thing I will say, though, is Amy said not much work, and then she said a weekly working group. And I cannot express to everyone enough that talking to other states that are rolling out 988 right now and at NENA or visiting 988 centers across the country, every one of them that are having success with this or seem to be embracing it is around the collaboration between the two, between the 911 and 988 world. I cannot speak to that enough. It could have very easily been, hey, we need location, and I show you rapid locate and walk out the door. But instead, we're seeing all these other value adds. I was in a 988 center in another state 2 weeks ago, and they were blown away that they could see county lines on our map. I'm like, that's that's no ad. So it's I don't know. We're discovering more and more every day. So it's been exciting, and again, such a collaborative effort from all the groups.
Wow, that is. I mean, that's ideal to me. That's the ideal, outcome. Or this whole, process. Putting everything together, doing this as a statewide rollout. Now, um, looking at how things went. So this is last week Saturday. Everything went live on July 16th. So Jennifer, what did you see? What were what were the I mean, was it what you expected? Were there more calls than than you thought there were going to be, or was there less calls? And the reason I asked too is because, for a long time in 911, everyone was talking about text to 911, and people were freaking out that they might have to hire one or two people to just specifically handle texting, because we didn't know, right? We didn't know until it finally hit. And luckily from my side, I wasn't in dispatch during the time that it hit. I was kind of jealous because I wanted to use the technology for a lot of things, but I was on the other end training dispatchers how to use it, and how certain things would not be coming in, because pictures and video, there was a lot of stuff that people were afraid of, and there's definitely more of that now within the last year or so that's been coming up and such. But we ended up finding out that it wasn't as significant as everyone thought it was going to be, because I think public education really played into that, where we ended up putting out there that this is not to take the place of 911. This is when voice is not enough, you can text. And I think a lot of people understood that. So for you, Jennifer, what in your area, everywhere that you cover for 988, how was the launch?
Well, it was supposed to be a soft launch.
Oh.
There wasn't going to be large billboards or anything like that. But on Sunday, we saw a 216% increase in calls. And so the pace was significant. What we were really surprised by is we expected that a good number of those calls would be people going, I just saw this commercial, what is this? And we had less than a full handful of those types of calls. That was surprising. So they were from folks who were in crisis, who did need to talk. One of the first things many of the folks said is, I've never called a place like this before. And also keep in mind that we offer chat and text as well. So where on a national level they saw a big shift was in the text utilization. Most people who went digital would use the chat function, and the text just started to match that volume. And the text takes significantly longer than chats. So that was one thing that we're trying to navigate as well. Well, how do we manage those workflows? And it was interesting for our staff. The pace was different than it had been. And the volume of folks who were suicidal was much higher than normal. So it was exciting to see that people who needed the service heard the service and called. And now we've got to learn how to fund and adapt to that call volume.
Right. I think that, definitely shows that this was something that was needed. Maybe there's a lot of people out there that they really didn't they wanted to talk to someone. They needed help, but they didn't want to talk. They didn't want to, have to, use their voice, have their voice out there or anything. And to have the ability to text, I can see where, a lot more people would end up, going for that, like you said. Now, how many people in the center are working at a time? Did you end up having to bring in a lot more people just as a just in case?
We did. We only had a few extra people that we could bring in, but yes, we did staff up. And especially because of the chat and text. And then another component of 988 is a follow-up service to offer outgoing phone calls to folks. So if anybody's identifies that they're suicidal in any way, how can we keep the conversation going until you get to your first therapy appointment or something like that, or that you could get connected to the resources, or you make it through the weekend to talk to your therapist Monday morning. So that outbound was another way that we had to adjust as well. So we're keeping the evolution. Normally on a weekend, we'd have 1 or 2. On Sunday, we had 17 outgoing follow-up calls from the Saturday. And so we're having to adjust on how we use our resources.
So from that time to now, do you see that it might increase, or do you think at some point, later on, a month or 2 months from now, do you think it'll just kind of level out?
I think over time it's going to keep increasing. Well, and I will tell you that next month we expect to see a big increase, because in South Carolina, they have opted to put, there's a law that says that they have to put the suicide prevention lifeline number on all student IDs 7th grade and up. So those kids will have that in front of them every day. So we're interested to see what that does to the call volume.
Wow.
Last year, one school district did it early, and within the first 24 hours, we saved the life of a 12-year-old. Being back in school where the bullying happened was just too much. So we know that the youth will use it.
That's amazing. That's really good that you'll have that on those IDs as well. I was thinking about the same thing as you were saying. There's a lot of bullying and a lot of just crap that goes on in schools and stuff that we don't know about. And there's a lot of kids, teenagers and such, who probably need help, and they don't have a place to turn. But now, they'll have that, and they'll be able to speak as well. Amy, did anything change for you all from the launch time till now?
Well, I actually don't do the staffing within the comm center, so I can't speak to call volumes within the comm centers within South Carolina. I do the technology.
So did you hear anything about, I guess, how about just kind of the mood, of the center really on, the build up to the launch? And I guess, have you heard anything from anybody else just in general on their thoughts on this launch?
In South Carolina, in Greenville County, we have been very involved in the working group. Each area has had someone involved in the working group, and it has definitely been a collaborative effort. All of Greenville County has been of the opinion that what can 911 do to help make this successful? What can 911 and the call takers do to make this work? Because mental health has been a subject that people have not talked about. It's a subject that people have not addressed. Inside law enforcement and public safety as a whole, it's something that you deal with. You deal with people's mental health, and you deal with mental health issues as part of your job. But there was no specialty to it. And I think that public safety has embraced this 911 and being invited to the table with mental health. They have embraced the idea that we can make this better for the citizens and for the people that need help. This is not a territory. This is not changing the way we do our job, but this is a way that we can help people. And this is a tool, and that this is something that we need to start paying attention to. As a 911 call taker, I'm not going to be able to provide for that person the way that Jennifer's call takers, or the way that Jennifer can. But what I can do is I can get them in touch with someone who can provide that service for them. And I've been really proud of the response that Greenville County has had and the support from the sheriff's office of using this as a benefit to citizens. And let's get our citizens mental health. And let's get them help and let's get them resources. And is there anything that we know that we do that can help 988 provide for those people? And I'm really proud of the way Greenville County has reacted and has stepped up to the plate to try and make that happen.
That again, it just feels like the planets aligned here. Like this is an excellent situation to have all of you come together and collaborate and working on something that is so important. And also something that people are finally really talking about, right? Like I said in the beginning or towards the middle, a lot from 2016 on to now, people are talking more and more about this, not so much, or not just those who are calling in that are needing assistance, but also those that are sitting in the chair and doing all of this as well. And then you add the technology side to it to be able to maneuver and help everyone involved. It's just an amazing thing. And it has been excellent to have the three of you on here to talk about this, to learn more about the three of you, but also about this topic, about 988. So as we go into the wrap up of this episode, and I want to ask this for all of you, as we look into the future a little bit here, I know it's just got this launch, but there's so much more, I believe, that's going to end up coming about this, especially as we talk about collaboration. But where do you see a lot of this going? Or actually, you know what? No, let me start again. For those who are looking at doing something collaborative the way the three of you have, what advice do you have for them? Because I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there who are watching and listening and thinking, damn, I wish we would have done something like that. I'm sure there are others out there who did something similar, but just listening to the three of you, that's like I keep saying, this is ideal. This is the way to do it. So anyone who's out there who we've gone through the launch now, right? And they're looking at improving, what it is that they're doing and trying to find a way to collaborate. What advice do you have? And I want to start with Jason here for this one from the tech side.
Honestly, I would say be open-minded and think innovation, right? I mean, I think one of our abilities, when that conversation first happened, I thought the solution was one thing, and that is a solution. But then we found out all of these other ways that our product could help 988. And if we'd have went in with just a one train of thought, this is going to be the solution, this is it, with no ability to pivot. And I think that is one of the advantages of being a cloud-based platform and being innovative and open-minded and open to new ideas and working with partners like Greenville and 988 is, thinking that way not only is going to build the platform and benefit the platform for those individuals, but the next agency or the next project that comes along. So to me, I think it's being open-minded and think, innovation and being, trying to be a thought leader within the industry. And I think that's what both individuals are doing here, and that creates collaboration overall. So that's my take.
Awesome. Jennifer, how about you?
Well, I would say that one of the strengths that we had is we brought all the right folks together. We invited all the PSAPs and mobile crisis folks who can go to the scene with law enforcement to help out, and crisis stabilization units and 211. So we had all the folks who were doing this together. I think one of the things that I promised early on was, I really understand as a nonprofit that help is not always helpful, and that I wanted to be an informed partner. So I think that's one of the things that we started out very early with just trying to understand each other and our process. I know that we probably talk a lot more than they need us to. And we learned the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and weapon. Those aren't,
Yeah.
our angle is, the individual, he struggled, and they're like, I need these things. And so even just something little like that about how to communicate to each other was really helpful. And we just knew not to assume that we knew how we could help. And learning that the liability issue is a huge discussion that we need to talk through and figure out, and being willing to be invited to the table in baby steps. Or invited to any call in baby steps because of the liability and the trust. We just really came at it from, we're here, let's see what we can do, and minimally, how can we help you better? Because we've worked with 911 for a long time, and we've seen them do heroic things for our callers, and how can we do that better? So when Amy mentioned this tip, it was a no-brainer or this tool, it was really a no-brainer to just go and see how we can make it work.
That's awesome. And then Amy, same.
So I think my piece of advice was do something. Even if you don't know what to do and you don't know who to talk to and you don't know what the solution is, or you really don't know what the problem is, still do something. And that do something may just be picking up the telephone and calling 988 and saying, I want to help. I work in a peace app. Who do I need to talk to? And I think with everything in life, if you approach it as what can I do to help you? And what can I do for you? Then you will get something out of it. It may not be what you expect, may not even be what you want, but you will get something. You will get a blessing out of it. And I think as long as you do something, and that's a rule in 911 call taking, is you always do something. And so I think my piece of advice is just do something. You don't have to solve the problem. You don't have to be the winner or the superhero. All you have to do is do something. And when you do something, then good things will happen.
I'd just add the scenarios were really helpful running through.
Yes.
Really understanding how people just looked at a situation was really interesting and fun to collaborate on. Just the weapon question, how we all approached what happened with a gun. It was those kinds of questions, situations were really helpful in starting to cement some understanding. So I'd add that as well as a suggestion.
The face-to-face, I get it about Zoom and I get it about the virtual stuff, but you can't replace getting in a room across the table and saying, okay, the phone's ringing and the person answers, what's the first question that you ask them? And walking through that, okay, they say they've got a gun. What does Jennifer say next? What does 911 say next? And you realize, oh my goodness, they've got 2 different perspectives on the same thing.
Yeah.
And realizing that, like I said, we've talked about location, where location is everything in a 911 call. It's not in a 988 call. Location only matters when I say I'm going to hurt myself or I've got the means and I've already tried. So the way we approach location is different. And, and then there's the problem that, these days with GPS, majority of people do not know what street they're on, much less what city they're in. And if you get real lucky, they might know what state, but people don't know where they're at anymore.
Yeah.
I'm at my friend's house. I don't know what their address is. So, and that's when we started realizing there's tools. So, being face to face and just talking through the way these things happen is a huge benefit.
Awesome.
And will be very productive on both sides of the issue.
Man, thank you so much, all of you, for being on and sharing a bit of you, but also about this important topic. I want to start with Amy here. How can people get a hold of you if they might have questions on, some of the stuff that you talked about, or maybe getting a little more advice or like a policy or anything like that? Is there a way that anyone can get a hold of you?
Well, now I didn't know you were going to ask that question. On your sheet. No, my name is Amy, A-M-Y, McDowell. You can email me. My email address is ammcdowell@greenvillecounty.org. They left the Y out to make my life difficult. So it's ammcdowell@greenvillecounty.org. You can get, if you're a member of NENA, you can contact me through the NENA website. I'm a member of NENA and I'm listed there. So you can contact me that way. Or I can give you my office number. Just pick up the phone and call me. It is 911. No, I'm just kidding. It is. So I'll do anything I can to help anybody. And we were worried that we wouldn't have enough to talk about.
Yeah, this has been really good. Thank you so much. And then Jennifer, how can people get a hold of you? Email, website, anything like that?
Sure. 988sc.org is our website. And then jennifer.piver@mhagc.org.
All right. Excellent. And then Jason, for you, how do people get a hold of you or try to find out what RapidDeploy is doing as well?
First, you see why I love Greenville County.
Amazing.
So you can find me at RapidDeploy.com or email is jason.fuquay@RapidDeploy.com.
All right. Excellent. Thank you again, all three of you, for being on and sharing this information. And I appreciate it more than you know. Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches Podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, RapidDeploy, as well as Carbine, but this was an exclusive RapidDeploy episode. And thank you so very much for being a sponsor and supporting as always. And also shout out to patrons. Thank you so much. We've got a lot of bonus content coming out, and a perk for patrons only are audio versions of the DRT, as well as Open Mic Live and the media partner sponsor Spotlights. Those are audio versions that'll be going out there. So if you want to be a patron of the podcast and help support us, you can hook us up here, patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.